Let's pray. Dear God, I need your help. I need you in this place. I've written some things down. I have some ideas, but it's not enough. It's not good enough. And I just ask that you come to this place. If there's anything that I have that's worth saying, just open their ears to hear me, Lord. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts together, Lord, be acceptable in your sight. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Today is Stewardship Sunday. Now, a lot of Stewardship Sunday can be a very uncomfortable thing in a lot of churches. Most places, they focus heavily on money. Maybe they'll gather a few guest speakers to come up, tell a few stories, and then really they just kind of rain guilt on everyone until they get what they want, which is pledges for more money. Today, I have kind of a different exercise in mind. Today, I want to talk about your identity. I want to talk about who you are. One thing I've realized in my life is that when somebody comes up to me and says, well, I'm a Christian, I don't know, I have this thing where immediately I start to doubt. And every time somebody feels the need to tell me, oh, I'm a Christian, I want to see some evidence. I want to see some proof. I want to see some fruit on that tree. I don't know what it is about that. You see, it's so easy to say you're a Christian. It's so easy to just say those words, oh yeah, I'm a Christian. But do you live a life that backs that up? Some of you in the room are Christian. Hopefully most of you, because you're here. You're a Christian, and so what does that look like practically in your life? How does your identity as a Christian shape who you are? Some of you are still exploring, still getting a feel for what does it mean to be a Christian. You're sitting on the fence, as it were. So pay attention, because today we're going to talk about what the cost of Christ is in your life. And so we get started, and our scripture lesson for today is Matthew with a parable of Jesus. It's a story that he told to teach a lesson. And so he's talking about it. He's got a master, and 3 servants. So he gives the first servant 5 bags of silver. The second servant gets 2 bags of silver, and then the third servant gets just the 1 bag of silver. Now, servant 1 and 2, they get to work right away, and they double their investment, right? They get to work, and they do a great job managing the money. But the third servant, he kind of is nervous. And so he buries the money in the ground. Literally, he digs a hole and puts the money in the ground, like a pirate or something. And he buries the money in the ground. And then we get to verse 19 when the master returns. And it says in verse 19, it says, after a long time, their master returned from this trip, and he called them to give an account of how they had used the money. And the servant whom he had entrusted 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more, and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. And the master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I'm going to give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. So do you see that? The master was full of praise. He was so excited, thrilled with the work of his servants. Now this has 2 results. Number 1, if you do a good job with the little that you've been given, you will be given more. If you handle what you've been given in life well, you will be rewarded with more. That's the first part. But the second part I want to point out is the master says, let's celebrate together. Let's celebrate. He's so excited that this servant has done a good job with the gift that he's been given. It's like he's throwing a party for this servant. Right? Let's celebrate together. When we thrive in life, that's something to celebrate, and God revels with us in our celebrations. He celebrates alongside us. He's so excited to watch us prosper, to watch us use the talents we've been given to do something good in the world. He's thrilled when we do that. Now, on the other hand, you've got the third servant. Now, he was just given the 1 bag of silver. He wasn't given that much money. But he was so afraid of losing that little bit he had that he froze. He didn't do anything. He couldn't do anything. He was so afraid. He was driven by fear. So he buries it in the ground. He hid his gift for fear of losing what precious little he had. But here's what I want to point out. He gave all the money back. Right? It's not like he lost a penny. He gave every penny back to the master. How many of us in the modern world would be that upset? Right? You loan money to someone, they didn't make any, but at least you got it back. Right? At least we're so easily satisfied with nothing. Right? Most of us would be like, oh, that's all right. At least I got my bag of silver back. But the master says, no, that's wicked, that's lazy. He's furious about it. He says, this is not good enough. In verse 26, it says, the master replied, you wicked and lazy servant. And then it skips down a bit and he says, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least then I could have gotten some interest on it. Wicked and lazy. Pay attention to that. If you do nothing with your life, it's wicked and lazy. We are not designed to maintain in this life, not just designed to stay the same. You are designed to thrive, to grow, to prevail. That's what God wants for your life. Doing nothing, that's wicked, that's lazy, that's horrible. Wasting potential is worse than failure. Wasting potential is failure. We are given our gifts to use them. That's why you've been given the gifts that you have. Now, I want to think about that in two ways. First, in terms of the church. As a church, we have been given gifts to use them, to do something with them in the world. We have potential. Our goal as a church is not maintenance. Our goal is not to stay the same. Our goal is growth, to be better tomorrow, to be stronger, to expand. In this room, there's an incredible collection of skill, talent and personality. I think we're starting to realize that. Slowly, we're starting to stir, kind of like a sleeping giant, slowly waking up to the potential, to the good that we can do in the world. We're starting to get it, right? I'm starting to watch you guys come alive, and it's really, really fun to watch. So many churches are stuck in that maintenance mentality. They're so afraid of closing, like that's the worst thing ever. So they take what tiny gifts they have, they bury it in the ground so that they won't close, so that nothing bad will happen. But what did the master say? That's wicked, that's lazy, that's wrong. It's worse to bury it in the ground than to take a chance. Go out there into the world, even if you fail, at least you tried. The master says that's wicked and lazy. So first in terms of the church. But the second way I want to look at that is terms of your personal life. Each and every one of you has gifts, talents, potential. Are you living a life of wasted potential? Do you bury the gifts that you have? Your prayers, your presence, gifts, service, and witness. How are you using them in the world? Are you reaching out into the world to stretch and expand and grow, to see what you are actually capable of? Or do you bury the pieces of who you are in the dirt of selfish interest and empty time wasters? Are you burying your potential? Are you sticking who you are in the ground? Now, you might have noticed I skipped the second servant. The second servant was given 2 bags of silver, and he returned with 2 more. Percentage-wise, he did exactly the same as the servant who had 5 bags. Right? This is 100% return on investment. That's really great. He did an awesome job. And you know what? He gets the exact same praise as the one who had 5 bags. Right? Literally, if you look at it in verse 21, it's the master responding to the first servant, and verse 23 is the master responding to the second servant. It's the exact same sentence. The master is thrilled. He says in verse 23, he says, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let us celebrate together. Now this shows us something incredibly important. The message of the second service is huge. It's not about the amount. Let me say that again. It's not about the amount. It doesn't matter what you've been given in life. Whether you were born into a wealthy family or you were born with nothing. It doesn't matter what you've been given. What matters is what you do with it. It doesn't matter what you start with. It matters what you do with it. If you have something little, and that's all you've got, if you've got something little, but you're able to do some small, valuable thing with your little, there's the same amount of rejoicing in heaven. Do you understand? There's no comparison of amounts in life, not when God's concerned. In fact, the message of the second servant is the same message we get from the widow. Our second scripture is nice and short. It's just like one little paragraph. It says, Jesus sat down near the collection box in the temple, and he watched the crowds drop in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. And then a poor widow came, and she dropped in 2 small coins. And Jesus called his disciples to him, and he said, I tell you the truth. This poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions. For they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. Pay close attention to that. What does it say? They say they gave a tiny part of their surplus, of their leftovers. They were just, whatever we had left, I'll give a little tiny piece of that. But she gave everything she had to live on. The amount is not important. It's all about percentage. Let me say that again. The amount is not important. It's all about the percentage. It's about the sacrifice we make in our life. It's about our identity. It's not about the money. Here's the thing. I don't think there's a lot of people in the church who are selfish. Right? I think we want to give. I think we're generous like in our heart. But then we start to look at our budget. You get to the end of the month and it's like, I just don't have anything left. I've got nothing left over to give. Well, that's fine, because God's not interested in the leftovers. You got to put God right up in the front of your budget. It's one of my favorite things about that Financial Peace University. Dave Ramsey puts that right at the beginning. Right? That's putting God first as a priority in your life. I don't think church people are less generous than they used to be. I think they're distracted. They're dealing with the surplus, with the leftovers. I really only have one real question for you today. I ask a lot of rhetorical questions in my sermons, but I have one real question. Who are you? Who are you? What is your identity? It's a hard question because identity is a tricky thing. Identity is relative. Everything around us is what makes us who we are. We are the connections to the things that are around us. Let me see if I can explain it this way. Take a second. Think of someone famous. Just everybody, go ahead and picture someone famous, a name or a picture. Keep that in your mind. How would you describe that person to someone else? How would you explain who they are to someone who doesn't know? You got to use the stuff in their life, right? You got to, he's that guy who wrote that book, right? She's that girl, she was in that movie, right? He's that CEO of the company, right? Now, is that his only identifying feature? No, but that's how we connect him. That's his identity by what he's around. She's married to that guy, he sings in that band. Identity is a social function. So let me ask you, who are you? If you strip away all the busyness in your life, all these connections, what is left of your identity? Who are you? Or maybe the better question is, whose are you? Who is in control of your life? I don't know what happened, but I'm starting to notice that somewhere along the line, we lost control of our lives. We've lost control. At some point, we stopped controlling the things that are in our lives, and they started to control us. We have this crisis of identity. Who are we? Whose are we? Do you remember when we controlled sports before sports controlled us? Do you remember when we controlled academics or work or social events before it controlled us? Here's an example. Do you remember dinner time? Do you remember that being a thing, right, where people would sit down at a designated time and everybody would have dinner? And you could look at sports practice and say, no, if you're going to hold sports practice, I'm going to be late because I've got dinner. If you're going to hold competitions and big things on Sunday morning, I'm going to miss it because I'm going to be at church. If you're going to make me work 7 days a week, I'm going to miss one of those days because God told me I need a Sabbath. I need a break. Do you remember when people got together and unionized and said, we need a Saturday? Do you remember? When we used to be in control of our lives. But now, what does it look like? You look at your schedule. How many of you look at your schedule with this feeling of helplessness? You look at the calendar and you feel totally overwhelmed and they're just powerless to change anything on there. When did we lose control of our lives, lose control of who we are? So who are you? Who is in control of your life? I think it's time. I think it's time for us to take back control of our lives and give it to the only one who can be trusted with our identity, and that's God. Who are you? As Christians, we find our truest identity. We find our freedom in our identity as a child of God. That's who we are. That's a part of who we are. The Methodist Church splits the Christian life into 5 categories. They talk about prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness. Now that covers everything from personal devotion to money to evangelism to church attendance to volunteering. It's time to take back control of your life and start to live a fulfilling life in the presence of God. And so what we're going to do for the application for the rest of the sermon, for the application portion of the sermon, I'm going to encourage you guys to look in your pews You probably noticed there's a stack of paper on the edge of the pew. If you could pass those around. Go ahead and do this during the sermon while I'm talking. That's not rude. Pass those down. And if there's not enough, check the pew in front of you. There's like 5 on every pew. Because some pews have 0 and some people have 5. What we're going to do... now this is designed for members. For regular attenders who are committed to Jesus. If you're a visitor today, I'm not expecting you. I don't expect you to be ready for this. That's okay. You're more than welcome to fill it out, but you don't have to. Just go ahead and sit tight. Those sheets are labeled Commitment to the Christian Life. Now, we did the same thing last year. This is the same model. That paper is a summary of all the different pieces of your commitment to God and to the church. This is a personal moment of identity and priority. There are envelopes in the pews. So the way this works is, take a second. Look at the 5 categories. Where do you want your priorities to be? What do you want your goal to be for the next year, for 2017? And then you fill that out. You don't put your name on it. There's not a spot to put your name on it. You fold that up, put it in the envelope that's in the pew there. And then on the front, go ahead and seal it. And put your name and your address on that envelope. The way this works is we collect them. Go ahead and put it in the offering today. But we don't open them. We don't need to see that. The message of the second servant is that the amount doesn't matter. It's not a comparison. It's not a contest. This is a personal moment between you and God, and those are the only 2 people that need to see that piece of paper. So what we do is we collect these. I put them in a safe box in my office for about 3 months, and then we're going to mail them back to you. That's how this works. So write down your commitments, your goals, and then we're going to mail that back to you. About mid-January, maybe early February, we're going to mail these back to you. So you're going to get a letter from yourself about your commitment, your goals to the Christian identity. Now there's one final piece I want to talk about while you guys are filling those out. I talk about our connection to God, and then I talk about the connection to the church. And there's always somebody who comes up to me after service and says, well, God is not limited to the church, right? I give somewhere else. God is not limited to the church. And you're absolutely right. God is not limited to these 4 walls. But I believe with all of my heart that God is working in this place. So while you guys are working on that, I kind of wanted to give you kind of a breakdown of what happens with your tithe. What do we do in this church? Our annual budget here at Wesley is a little less than $250,000 a year. That's about how much we spend in a year on everything. Now that includes salaries and the building and programs and outreach and everything we do. I mean, choir, everybody. That fits into about 200, it varies, between 220 and 260 in the last like 10 years. But $250,000. Now that breaks down to about $4,800 a week to keep this place running. If you ever look at the 11 o'clock service, there's that little line. It's like last week's offering, right? If it's less than $4,800, we're probably under budget. Currently this year, we're about $500 under budget for the year, which is fine. We just have to tighten our belt on a couple of programs. We do all right. But what I wanted to point out is when we got here, we had about $126,000 in debt. Mostly from the roof fund, $126,000 in debt. The most recent report that I just read, I had to double check it, was $63,198.08. 126,63, which roughly we have halved our debt in the last 2 years alone through the phenomenal efforts of the finance committee, good money management, and your generosity. We have been able to reduce our debt by half. And we are on track. If we keep this up, if we keep pushing, if we keep growing, we're on track to be debt-free by the end of next year. And the only reason we wouldn't be debt-free is if we started doing some crazy outreach stuff. We're considering buying some new property, and we get to dream a little bit. So now, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, on the budget side of things, it's about 22 grand a year that suddenly gets freed up to do more ministry. Rather than paying the bank, rather than paying this leech that's on our budget, that's $22,000 that gets freed up. Do you know what this church could do with $22,000 extra dollars in a year? I mean, literally, we could... I love dreaming about this kind of stuff, right? We could open an orphanage or a school in Africa if we wanted. Because I looked up how much that costs. And I like to dream about that stuff, but again, it's not about the money. I'm not looking at any of these. This is not what that's all about. It's fun to dream, but that's not the point. The point is if you're faithful with a little bit, you will be rewarded with more. And we, I believe, have been faithful with our little bit. So I need you to ask yourself, is this something you want to be a part of? Is this part of your identity? Who are you? Are you ready to take back control of your life? J.D. Rockefeller once said, I never would have been able to tithe the first $1 million I ever made if I had not tithed my first salary, which was $1.50 a week. He tithed $1 million, and he kept making that money, so you got to assume he continued to do that. The thing about living into an identity with God is that when you set your priorities correctly, when you have this all lined up and all organized, it just kind of fades into the background of a fulfilling life in the presence of God. If you set your priorities right, it's not such a stressor. You don't have to worry about it. It just fades into the background of a fulfilling life. It's not an easy fight. We have to take back control of our life from the 1,000 other voices that are out there trying to drown out the voice of God. And so I'll leave you with this. May you be a good and faithful servant. May you be faithful with whatever God has given you, whether it's a little or a lot. May you be faithful with what you've been given. Use your gifts to grow and thrive and live into your identity. And may you celebrate with the Master when he returns.